friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm here to share with you all of the books that I bought on my trip to Scotland. I'm going to link my Scotland vlog in the description box and in the cards in case you haven't seen that yet. But yes, I've got a stack and pile of books over here, as well as a few pre-orders to show you, and another book that I got for my anniversary from my boyfriend. So without further ado, I'm just going to get into the books. So the first three books I've got to share with you I got in Carlisle while I was there on my trip to visit Shah from Thoroughly Enjoyed Books. I will also link Shah's vlog video of our little meetup in the description box for you to check out. But weirdly, this is a book that Shah said that I would really enjoy and has been trying to get me to buy for a while, and one that I have been interested in since it was on the shortlist or the long list, I don't know, for the Women's Prize for Fiction. Oh, tell me on here. Shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction, but that is The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak, and this one is set in Cyprus in 1974, and it follows two teenagers who are on opposite sides of a divided Cyprus after its invasion. And I am very intrigued about reading this one because my boyfriend is Cypriot, so I do know a little bit about the Cypriot War or the war in Cyprus. So I'm just, like I say, intrigued to see what the author sort of does with this one, and obviously then discuss it as well with my boyfriend. But the one thing that got me to want to buy and read this was when Shah explained to me that the story is kind of told by a tree. And after I heard that, I was like, yes, I'm here for it. I love stories that have like a different way of the story being told. I also believe it follows another perspective decades later of a 16-year-old girl called Ada, who has never visited Cyprus and is trying to sort of untangle her family tree. So I'm sure all of the different perspectives are just going to create, hopefully, what is a very interesting and beautiful story. So the next two books are secondhand, and I got them in the secondhand bookshop that we had lunch in, and it was honestly like a maze. I think it's the biggest bookshop I've ever been in, so I of course wanted to buy a few secondhand books. But the first one I picked up was Waiting for Anya by Michael Morpurgo. If you're new here, then you may not know, but I am a big Michael Morpurgo fan. I wasn't, as a child, a Jacqueline Wilson child. I was a Michael Morpurgo child, so I only really read Michael Morpurgo books because I just loved everything that I read by him when I was little, and the way he writes his stories. They're like historical, based on real life events, but also sometimes have a little bit of magic in them. I just always leave reading one of his books or his stories and with a warm fuzzy feeling, which, I always love. And I've also found that as an adult rereading his books, I actually get more out of them because there are things that I maybe didn't understand when I was a child. So that's why I'm trying to read more of the Michael Morpurgo books that I didn't read when I was younger, and Waiting for Anya is one of them. I particularly like his historical ones. So this one is set during the Second World War, and it follows our main character Joe, who stumbles on a dangerous secret that Jewish children are being smuggled away from the Nazis over the border into Spain, close to his mountain village. Now German soldiers have been stationed at the border, Joe must get word to his friends that the children are trapped. The slightest mistake could cost their lives. So I feel like this one's going to pull at the heartstrings, but like I said, I enjoy Michael Morpurgo's writing and books even now as an adult, so I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this one. The next book I bought is a bit of a random one, but it's Dr. Faustus, or Faust, I don't know. The one thing that confuses me about this, it is a play. I do know of the play. It's when someone essentially makes a deal with the devil and sells his soul to the devil, or I don't know, something to do with the devil and making a deal with the devil. We were going to do it in high school and we never did, and since then I think I've just been intrigued about it and have wanted to read the play ever since. But there seems to be so many different versions and names of the play and authors, and I don't know if that's because it's translated. I don't know, it's just very confusing. Therefore, it's difficult to buy a copy online anywhere because I'm like, is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? I don't know. Sometimes it seems to be in 2 parts and the play is only 1 part. I don't know. It's very confusing. But Shah kind of helped me out when I was looking for this, because she did say by Christopher Marlowe, so she found this for me, and there were a few different editions, but I decided to go with this one because it looked the easiest to understand, and that's because it's an Open University set book, and that I don't really mind. So the next 2 books I bought in Wigtown, which is Scotland's largest or national book town, because there are, I think, 12 or 13 bookshops. A lot of them second-hand, but then some of them also sell new books. And the first one I went into was called The Bookshop. And like I said, it's the largest bookshop in Scotland. Well, that's what it says on the front of the bookshop and on their bookmarks, so I have to believe that. But I got a signed copy of 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops by Sean Bethel, and the reason why it's signed is because he's also the owner of the bookshop, which is so cool. And me and my auntie who were there, we kind of went up the stairs, and then it's kind of like there's books up the stairs, but it's cut off because then it's his house where him and his family live, and he walked past. So I saw Sean and also decided to buy this book that I have actually heard of, and a signed copy, because I didn't realise, but he is the owner of the bookshop and the largest bookshop in Scotland. So that, I think, is just very cool. And yes, this is basically just a non-fiction book about the 7 kinds of people you would find in bookshops, and I believe it's very comical, so hopefully I can get to this one soon. And then in one of the children's bookshops in Wigtown, or it's not Wigtown, it's pronounced Wigton. I don't know why. Me and my Englishness, even though my family is Scottish, pronounce things in such an English way when it's actually pronounced Wigton. But anyway, I got another Michael Morpurgo book because this one has been on my wish list for a long time. It's one of his newer ones. Obviously it's called Shadow, and it's about a dog, and that's why I've been meaning to pick this one up and buy it for ages, except I was just waiting for the right time, and then I saw it in the children's bookshop and I thought, yes, today is the day I buy this book. And again, this one is also historical and war related, but more modern, because it's set in Afghanistan, and it follows a man who's never needed a friend more than when a Springer Spaniel appears in the mouth of his Afghan cave. I don't want to read any more than that because, like I said, I feel like this one is going to definitely pull at the heartstrings, with it being war related and the fact that there's a dog, and if the dog dies I'll be very, very, very upset, because look at the dog. The dog looks so cute. And the final 2 books I bought in Scotland were in Gatehouse of Fleet, in the Mill on the Fleet bookshop. So on the top floor of the Mill is a bookshop, and it's like one of my favourite bookshops ever. But I always make sure I buy something from there because, like I said, it's one of my favourite bookshops ever. But they had a limit of £5 if you wanted to pay by card, so I had to buy 2 books, obviously, because I had no cash on me. But the first one I picked up was Dubliners by James Joyce, because this is just one of those books that everyone talks about, I guess. It's referenced in quiz shows all the time, and I just want to know what it's all about. The one thing that does scare me about this slightly is that I know that James Joyce also wrote Ulysses. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know, but that's the massive book that apparently makes no sense at all. So I'm a bit worried about the writing style of this, I guess, and again, I don't know a lot about it, but I think it's short stories. It's like a combination of short stories set in Dublin. Yes, his stories are rooted in the rich detail of Dublin life, portraying ordinary, often defeated lives with unflinching realism. And I like me some of that. So yes, that's got me more excited about reading this one. And the second book I bought is absolutely gorgeous, and the premise sounds very interesting, and I can't believe I haven't seen or heard of this anywhere on the book internet or booknet, booktube, anything. I'm just very surprised. But the second book I picked up was Gratitude by Delphine de Vegan. So I do believe this one is a translated novel. It's been translated from French, and just look at the cover, it's gorgeous. It's also quite short, and I do like a short book, but I'm going to read the back to you because, like I said, that is what grabbed me and it sounds very, very intriguing. Jerome is a speech therapist working in a care home, but his new patient, Mika, is no ordinary case. For Mika is haunted by strange figures who threaten to unearth a secret guilt that she's carried since she was a little girl. Mika doesn't know how to repay her debt, and as her words slide out of her grasp, time is running out. I'm just very intrigued by that, very, very intrigued. And flicking through it, it looks as though it's sort of multiple perspective between Mika and Jerome, and maybe some other people, because someone else's name came up right at the beginning. Yes, so I feel like it's going to be one of those ones where I have no idea what's going on until the end, and I love those kind of novels. So those are all of the books that I got in Scotland. Now moving on to, like I say, my pre-orders and the book that I got for my anniversary. But firstly, I want to share with you the book I got for my anniversary from my boyfriend because it is stunning. I did ask for this, but even if I hadn't, I'm pretty sure he would have worked out that I wanted it anyway. But it is the premium edition of House of M, which is of course the storyline in the Marvel comics to do with Wanda / the Scarlet Witch and her children, and that whole thing that basically WandaVision is loosely based on. So the only other Marvel comic sort of bind up that I've read before is another one I got for my anniversary, which is the Infinity War bind up, and it's got loads of sort of different storylines and editions of the sort of like Infinity War situation, and I really enjoyed reading that and seeing how obviously Marvel and the films were kind of like developed from that in a sort of brand new and different way. So I'm equally as excited to read this and see how WandaVision was kind of like taken from this, and obviously very excited for all of the stunning graphics and everything, and I'm so happy I own this because I'm a big Wanda fan. And the last two books, like I said, are pre-orders, and I have actually mentioned these in a previous video, in my anticipated releases video, so I can link that as well. But the first one, well, they're both absolutely stunning, but the first one is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I can't get it in frame because it's mahoosive. Yeah, she's big, and just like I say, absolutely stunning. I would take this off, but I don't want to ruin it. It's so stunning. So I was actually unsure if I wanted to pre-order this because I kind of thought, because A, it was very expensive, and B, I thought, was I just being caught in the hype after reading Hamnet and loving that, and was this maybe not really my kind of thing? But then I read the synopsis and was like, yes, that is definitely the kind of book I would enjoy regardless, and I know from Hamnet how amazing and beautiful Maggie O'Farrell's writing is, so as long as I get that in this book, I guess I don't really care about the storyline. But it is historical fiction. It's set in Renaissance Italy, and I think it's going to be sort of like a feminist novel because it follows our main character Lucretia, who's 16 years old and I think is married off to a kind of strange man, so I can imagine all sorts of things coming from that. But similar to Hamnet, I kind of want to go into this one as blind as possible because that's what I did with Hamnet, and it was just such a good idea to do that because you get so much more out of it. But I am hoping to read this one soon. I don't want it to be sat on my shelves for a year and a half, 2 years, because like I say, I pre-ordered it and it is stunning, and I want to read it when everyone's hyping about it. And last but not least is another very popular one at the moment that I want to get to sooner rather than later because the hype around this one is real, and I feel like it coming up to autumn, it'll be the perfect time to read this. But she is a beast. I didn't realise until I took it out of the packaging and I was like, whoa, I don't want to know the page length because if I do, it'll just put me off reading it. But it is, of course, Babel, I don't know yet. I need to read it and hopefully it will tell me how to pronounce it. But I've heard both people saying Babel and Babel, so I don't know. But it's of course by R.F. Kuang, and I have not read her other trilogy. I always wanted to say The Dragon Republic, but that's like the second or third book. The Poppy War trilogy, just because I was kind of, I don't want to say least interested in that, but it came out when I kind of went off fantasy, but this one is fantasy, but I believe it's more sort of like dark academia fantasy, and I am hoping, fingers crossed, that it is a standalone. But yeah, it sounds a lot more up my street. It's set in a sort of like fantasy version of Oxford. So it's set in Oxford in 1836, and Babel is the Royal Institute of Translation, and all of that just sounds so interesting. But like I said, I don't want to know much more about this one. I feel like, again, it will be one that's better going into absolutely blind, because I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, seeing as how massive it is. And the text or the font is also really small, which I wasn't expecting. It's not crazy small, but it's also not big. Oh, and there's footnotes. I love footnotes. Okay, I'm so excited. My camera battery died, so I don't know where it cut out, but I was saying I'm not going to hold any of them up because they're too heavy and I can't really be bothered. But those are all the books that I have bought recently. Please let me know one book that maybe you've bought recently that you're really excited about getting around to reading. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you soon in my next video. Bye.